Also, legal forms of ID circulating. Here is where it really starts to get tricky and where you really start to see where the problems lie. First off, like I talked about earlier, we have 49 valid versions of the Social Security card in circulation. 49 valid versions of that Social Security card that you have been given since, a few years after birth or right after birth, and that card really has no rhyme or reason to it. They're blue and they have squiggly lines and so forth. They're paper. They're not supposed to be laminated. The older ones used to say on the back of them not to be used for identification purposes. They don't say that anymore. And with 49 valid versions of the Social Security card with no security value in that card itself, at any given time, anybody with a computer and a printer and a scanner can recreate that Social Security card very easily. No security in that identifying document that, again, unfortunately, is our national ID. That's what the Social Security number is. And then there are 14,000 variations of the birth certificate in circulation. 14,000 variations of the birth certificate. So depending on where and when you were born may depend on what your birth certificate looks like. So there's really no rhyme or reason whatsoever to what a birth certificate is supposed to look like. It's a paper document that is generally printed up, issued through states and towns, cities and towns, and it really has no rhyme or reason to what it looks like. So your kid's birth certificate probably looks very different than what yours looks like, maybe even different than what your parents look like as well. And so anybody can take pretty much any document and they can manipulate it, recreate it, put it through an oven to make it look older, to dry it out, and make it look like a real birth certificate. Do all kinds of funny stamps on it, and here they have a birth certificate. So these are, identifying documents that are supposed to have a lot of value to identify who you are. And it can easily be recreated with a printer and a scanner and a desktop PC. And then there are 200 plus forms of driver's licenses in circulation throughout the country. So throughout the United States, there's an average of 4 to 5 different driver's licenses in each state. So depending on when your driver's license expires, you may have a newer one or an older one depending on the state that you live in. So even state to state, there's no rhyme or reason to what a driver's license is supposed to look like. Sure, they have a photograph on them, and they have a signature on them, they have information about your address and so forth. But really, they all look very different. They have each different state logos and so forth. Now, there's no standardization to these driver's licenses. There's very little security in these driver's licenses. While they have certain holograms and foils, you hold them a certain way. All of that technology is very similar to stuff that you get in the gumball machines at the checkout counter of the grocery store. Holograms and foils, all that stuff. Not a lot of security in the existing form of a driver's license. That's a really big problem. This is an identifying document that can easily be compromised. In just a few minutes, I'll show you some more examples. Also, 14 states currently produce forms of identification that do not have a photograph on them. Think about that for a second. State agencies, government agencies that are producing forms of ID with no picture on them. It is 2008, and we're still doing that in this country. Because some states, they just don't think things through, for whatever reason. They talk about privacy issues. They talk about protecting the privacy of their citizens and so forth, that it's a violation of their whatever. They're just not thinking clearly. It's more that they're cheap, and they don't want to invest in the technology to properly identify. And so, being that that's the case, 14 states with no photo, you can see that we still have a long way to go. And here is an example recently of a man that was held with fake IDs. In Milwaukee, a federal magistrate yesterday ordered that a man accused of trying to board a plane with $44,000 in cash and 9 blank passports be held without bail. $44,000 in cash and 9 blank passports. Now, the man's name was Austin Silha. He faced charges of possessing fake identification and legitimate identification to be used fraudulently. Now, he was carrying a fake Pakistani passport, 5 Indiana driver's licenses, 5 Social Security cards, and 9 blank passports from the Republic of Guinea. Assistant U.S. Attorney Fraser Smith said. He said that officials believe that a passport from the West African country of Guinea-Bissau bearing the Silha name was real. Now, Steve Ingram, an assistant U.S. attorney, said that he did not believe that Silha had any ties to terrorists. I don't know. What do you think? 44,000 in cash, 9 blank passports, 5 Indiana driver's licenses. Something's up with this guy. You know, and the reality of it is that our system is so flawed that those all over the world have figured out, and they're taking full advantage of it. Now, I have another question regarding our systems of identification. The handwritten signature, okay, and I'd like to get a little participation from the room. My question to you is, what do you believe, or what is your definition of, or what do you see a handwritten signature as? What is a handwritten signature? What is it? What is it?
A scribble.
Verification, do you understand the information from the contract? A scribble. What else? It's unique to who you are. Someone said that as well. It's all those things. It's your identifier that you understand what's going on in that contract. It's essentially a scribble. And that really is what it is. I mean, a handwritten signature, when you think about it, doesn't really have a lot of, you know, high-tech security built into it. I mean, how many people know someone that they specialize in handwriting analysis? Like, that's their job. I mean, have you even met anyone? Have you ever been to a handwriting analysis department? It's not one of those things that we, you know, pay much attention to. And do you think that the clerk behind the counter at Walmart is skilled in handwriting analysis? And show of hands, how many wives in this room have forged their husband's signature? Come on now. Exactly. And vice versa for that matter. I mean, here it is. It's 2008, and we're going on a piece of paper, and that's authenticating a document. That is not an effective form of identification. It's not an effective form of authentication. So here, you begin to understand why we have such a problem. We're using forms of identification that really mean nothing. Social security numbers that can be applied to anyone. Birth certificates that mean nothing. There's 14,000 variations that can be reprinted all day long. Same thing with driver's licenses. And then using a handwritten signature as a form of identification, authentication. And that's why $50 billion is lost every single year. That's why 10 million people are getting nailed every single year. And there really is no end in sight to this problem unless there are significant changes made in the system. And there are some upgrades in the future. We'll talk about more about that in a bit. Here's an example of signatures. I mean, really, what does that thing look like? It looks like an EKG graph. You know? And that right there is ridiculous. But that is a handwritten signature. And now, with, you know, self-checkout, and you swipe your credit card through yourself and all that stuff, you know, there's really no authenticating anyone at this point. I mean, now we've pretty much, credit card companies and retailers have pretty much thrown their hands up to a certain degree, which is unfortunate, because in the end, we're all going to lose. Breeder documents. You know, what are breeder documents? Well, first of all, you know what breeding is. Breeding is when you put two things together, you get a third, right? Okay. Well, breeder documents are when you take a, let's say, a fake social security card that you've created, along with a real birth certificate. And you take those two documents, you put them together, you bring them down to the registry of motor vehicles, and you get a real driver's license. So you're breeding documents. Breeder documents include birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, social security cards, credit cards, membership cards, also legal documents, immigration papers, professional licenses, doctor of laws, trade certifications, and so on. And once somebody understands how this system works, they can just go ahead and breed documents all day long. Fake IDs. Here is a really big problem. There isn't a college kid in America that does not know another kid on campus that is selling fake IDs. Okay? They're just plastic documents. You could go online, you can buy machines for under $1,500 that will print up a beautiful, beautiful driver's license. Perfect. For under $1,500. Polaroid makes them. They're made for government agencies and corporations for access control, you know, for identification to get in the building. So there's a perfectly legitimate reason for them. But anybody can buy them, and they're used for a variety of different purposes. Now, online, if you go over the internet and you search the term fake ID, you'll find companies that'll sell fake IDs from all over the world. Recently did a search and found a website. This one here is called noveltyids.com, and their tagline, this is kind of funny, your online supplier for novelty IDs, be who you want to be. Be who you want to be. So all you have to do is go online and be who you want to be. And here are all their different United States driver's licenses. These are all pictures of all the different licenses. Illinois, Massachusetts, Nevada, Ohio, New Jersey, Minnesota, Montana, Maryland. Wherever you want to go, whoever you want to be, you can buy a fake ID. It's unfortunately as simple as that. And here is their order form. Quality IDs. It says, print out the document, fill out the information, choose the ID package. Make sure you sign the disclaimer and sign in the box. Get a picture with a headshot of about 1 inch by 1 inch passport photos work best. Send the completed information, your picture, and a check or money order made payable to cash, yeah right, to the address at the bottom. All prices in US dollars. The address at the bottom is Affairs de Qualité, Turkenstrauss, Munich, Germany. So they operate all over the world. They operate virtually. It's not like we can just go in there and shut them down if they're operating in China or Germany or wherever. They function globally. And it asks for ID info. It asks for last name, first name, middle name, address, city, state, zip, date of birth, height, weight, sex, eye color, hair color, and what's that? Social security number. Why would you need that for a novelty ID? And then down here, sign your name within the box. We know how easy that is to do. And then the pricing. State ID, $200. Social Security card, $200. Press pass, $200. Alien ID, $200. ID and Social Security card, $275. Our system of identification is based on the honor system. The people honestly aren't going to go out and just get a fake ID. Here is really where we have a major problem. We have not been properly identified. Our system of identification is based on the honor system. You're all honest people. Most of you. The system is set up right now that we are all sheep and there are no wolves. But as we know, there are plenty of wolves, and they are having a feast on you and I right now as we speak. There'll be another 29,000 people this hour.